When you think of an old film, what comes to mind? Gone with the Wind? Wizard of Oz? Casablanca? Or maybe if you're a horror fan, you think of something unique, like Psycho, Nosferatu, maybe some of the original horror monster movies. Hi, welcome to Screen Films, where we analyze the content of movies and just talk about them. I have a unique answer to that question that I just gave you. That movie is M. M is directed by Fritz Lang and released in Germany in 1931. Lang is known for directing Metropolis, The Testament of Dr. Mabuse, A Thousand Eyes of Mabuse, Hangman, Also Die, and others. M was released a few years before a funny man with a little mustache decided to take over Germany and change basically the country forever. M corresponds with that history with a little bit too well with how the police look like to the people of Berlin, in the movie that is, not in real Berlin. That was the military, honestly. Today, I would like to talk about M and the content of the film that makes it good, and is an expression of German history in the 1930s and 40s, and if it still holds up to this day. We're gonna determine if this movie is good with 3 questions that we'll answer at the end. Does this movie hold up? Did it impact Hollywood or society? And if it's rewatchable. As well, if you find this interesting, please watch the movie. Don't just use my video to cover it. I'm not going to cover everything in the film, but at least a few things in the film that actually kind of stand the point of why I think it's good or not. Definitely watch the movie. It'll probably be way better than this video. So, we're going to start off by talking about the cinematography. The cinematography in this movie is pretty outstanding for it being made in the 1930s. Yes, it is basic, but it flows with the movie smoothly and has some panos and moves with the characters. Most movies during this time were being made had stationary camera angles and didn't affect the feeling of the scene. Most of them, that is. This movie showed how camera movements change the feeling of the scene and what is being shown. This movie is smart with what it is showing on screen. For example, in the beginning of the movie, there's an impressive crane shot that opens the movie and goes on for a good solid 20-ish seconds, maybe a little bit less. This movie comes swinging for the fences to be unique, and it worked very well. The camera is also placed where the audience can only see the shadow of the killer, to keep it kind of a mystery to show that it could be anyone in the town. When the first murder in this film is shown, the audience only sees the ball bounce out of the bushes and the balloon that was bought flies up to the power lines, as well as the perspective of the mother of the first victim and the emptiness of the neighborhood that her child is nowhere to be seen. It's pretty dark. The camera work most of the time is filled with the wide shot to show how big the city is when the streets are full and when they're empty. One of my favorite shots in this film is when the crime lords and the police are plotting to catch the child. It starts with one person in the group talking about their idea, then cuts to the other perspective of the opposite group. This goes on for a little bit, but the audience is getting information that enhances the plot forward in the next act. It's too good for its time, but as we know, the cinematography is stronger with some good lighting alongside it. So let's get to that. The lighting in this film can be phrased into 2 words: German Expressionism. For those that don't know what German Expressionism is, it's the use of visual distortion and over-the-top performances to show their inner problems, fears, and desires of the area. German Expressionism originally reflected the inner conflicts of post-World War I Germans by giving their woes an inescapably external presence. The sets were oversized and looked uncanny. The lighting is very creepy and sets a disturbing tone. The cinematography is warped as well. One of the best examples of German Expressionism is The Cabin of Dr. Caligari. If you need a modern example of German Expressionism, Tim Burton is the best modern director that uses German Expressionism well. With the use of German Expressionism, the movie's tone becomes dark and engrossing as we see different perspectives throughout the film. The chiaroscuro lighting in the kangaroo court scene depicts that the crowd has turned to the darker way of the force to get rid of the killer, while the representative is in the light, trying to do what is right for the man on trial. The lighting also feels very film noir-like, which is very interesting since this came out a little bit before the major noir films started being a big idea in Hollywood. The shadows can feel terrifying when you don't know if something is there or not. During the first part of the film, Hans is only shown as a shadow. Hans is the killer, by the way. As a shadowed figure, he is an approaching social menace, holding the masses in a terrifying grip of fear. Near the end, the lighting shows his trajectory from the shadow to self. The increase in physical presence corresponds with his loss of power over society. There is still a lot of lighting depictions in this movie that are still out there. I'm only covering a little bit in the ones that I really like. Please watch the film if you want to see others. Let's go ahead and just get to sound. This movie has an interesting use of sound, because there's barely any sound in this movie. What I mean by sound, I mostly mean the soundtrack-wise. There's no soundtrack, honestly. It's not there. During the beginning of the movie, there's an overload of sound with people, cars, and the whistling that the killer uses. Throughout the movie, you hear arguments with hordes of people that are mad at each other trying to do the right thing. As well, at the beginning of the movie, you see a group of children play a weird version of Eeny Meeny Miny Mo, which foretells that there is a killer that likes to focus on children instead of adults. Please don't demonetize me, YouTube. With the use of sound in this movie, the audience can feel how deserted the town is with it being silent during the night scenes, and how alive it is during the day. During the movie, the audience hears the song In Hall of the Mountain King. The song is used to emphasize that the killer is near stalking his prey, instead of just showing the killer in the background and making oblivious that he's near. Later in the audience, it's shown that Hans uses the song to control himself from committing the attacks, which is an interesting song nowadays because it's a meme song now, and it can be very intense to listen to. Doesn't help that this dude's insane. Before I continue going on with the story that's next, I will be covering the entire story here. So if you don't want to be spoiled, watch the movie, then come back. Or you can just go to the timestamp if you're really that lazy. Calling you out. You have been warned, basically, at this point. The movie starts with a child being creating havoc within the city of Berlin. Smart move. The police are roaming the streets of Berlin trying to catch this guy. It's not working, by the way. The underground crime leaders are getting tired of not having this business because the police are always roaming around during the nighttime. One night, they think it's a good idea to capture the killer themselves. How, you might ask? By using the homeless and poor on the streets. On the other hand, the police are making a plan to catch the killer by looking at files of people who have been released from insane asylums. So pretty much what they always do in a cop movie. While this is happening, we see that Hans Becker, the killer by the way, is doing human stuff. And just not a killer. Eventually, Becker finds a child that he plans on killing, and a blind man, who was in the beginning of the movie, remembers the whistling that Becker did at the beginning, and gets this random dude who we haven't been introduced to follow him. Smart. Eventually, the dude marks Becker with the infamous M that is on the title and cover of this film. And the undercrime boys start chasing him and surrounding him in a building. Also during this, the police have a lead that Becker is the killer, by the way. They took that long. The underground boys get into the building, eventually find him and grab him. A security guard at the building notifies the police through a siren, and the police capture one of the main underground boys and interrogate him. During that, Becker is put into the infamous kangaroo court scene, where eventually the people of the court start charging at him because they want to kill him. When you guessed at it, the police show up and stop it. The movie ends with a cliffhanger on Becker's fate. If that's still too long for you, I can condense it a little bit smaller. Man kills child, city goes crazy, police and mob try to catch man, mob snags man, cops save man from people's court, end. And that's basically the movie shortened to the minimal that I can do without spoiling it for the people who haven't decided to watch this movie yet. Please watch it, it's a good film. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room in this. And that's the political statement that I decided to give it. What can I say? I'm good at doing that. So let's go! Hi, Editor Me here. Just wanted to say a few things before I continue on the video. One, I totally forgot to bring up the acting in this. The acting in this movie is really good. Peter Lorre is probably the best role in this film. He plays Hans, by the way. He shows the insanity of a person very well. I mean, he did come from stage acting, so it makes sense that he's able to bring that out. But I just want to let you guys know that the acting in this movie is really good for its time in the 1930s. It's pretty well done. I forgot to write anything for acting in the first place, so just wanted to quickly put this in. The acting, as I'm going to say it again, it's really good. I don't really need to say much on it. Pretty much that for acting. As well, for the political statement that I'm going to do just in a minute, I do kind of bring up some weird stuff in it. I mostly as in geeky stuff. I bring up the dark side 2 to 3-ish times. Just wanted to let you guys know I totally meant to be serious with this part. The dark side kind of wasn't meant to be Star Wars-y. I was kind of saying stuff on the spot a little bit, but as well, I just wanted to get to the point of, yeah, the people of either in real life or in the movie, their humanity has changed. So their light side, so I would say, you know, it's just their regular selves, and then they turn to this darker side of themselves when they do whatever they were going to do, which I will get to in a minute. So just wanted to emphasize that, so don't be like, oh, you're doing something weird with it. I'm trying to do my best and be serious as I can. And then as well, I also did have to edit a lot of stuff out for this, because I try to be snarky with it. So hopefully it's not as weird as it should be. I'm trying to be as serious as I can with this part. So, alright, let's get to it. Thank you. So as I said at the beginning of this video, this movie can correspond with the history of Germany in the 1930s and 40s. This movie is good at showing the ideology of how human nature can be pushed until it eventually gives and changes entirely. There's mostly 2 spots that prove this statement: the kangaroo court scene and the police side of the story. With the police side, there are shots of the police in squads marching down the empty streets, patrolling through the night and doing police raids when necessary. They raided a bar filled with people and forced them to show their identifications. Sadly, no one someone had Jedi mind tricks to have them not see their identification. Big sad. And if they were sketchy, they'd be sent off in trucks to the station. As well in this scene, there are people who are mad at the police for them not doing their job of catching Hans. Now, the police bar is more suggestive than the kangaroo court section. In the kangaroo court scene, you see Hans on his knees pleading to the kangaroo court his case. As well, if you convey the themes of presence and power in the scene, you see the humanization of a monster and the inversion of the power dynamic, which becomes difficult to determine which is more disturbed, Beckett or society. It does work for him just a tad, and then it backfires on him when someone says something. The low camera angle sets firmly on him crawled into a ball, leading to appeal, not just for his captors, but straight to the audience. Lang is asking the big questions of damnation to the audience, making them feel like they are there interacting with the court session. The film doesn't ask for sympathy for Beckett, but it's asking for clarity. Clarity is very important. As he says in his own defense, he cannot escape or control the evil compulsions that overtake him. Safecracker, the lead mob boss by the way, in a still medium shot with the jury showing the society that is in the court, goes on to say that Hans needs to be killed to prevent more murders. Don't blame him. Makes sense. The insanity plea only works for a little bit with people and then reset. The people around Safecracker are looking at him as a hierarchy and being silent when he speaks and agrees with him in what he has to say. This can be relevant to Germany, listening to a little short man with a funny little mustache, and like how he wanted to have genocide on a specific religion that he had nothing to do with. While the court is agreeing with Safecracker, the man who's representing Hans wants to speak out and say what he wants to say. Obviously, he's representing Hans. Of course, he has his right to say stuff. With the representative and Hans being a still medium shot and close-up shots of the crowd mixed in, the representative makes his case and Hans should be put into a mental hospital instead of being killed, because he is human after all. While the people are calling the representative out and disagreeing with him. After that, we get a close-up shots of people agreeing with the lady that just said that and chanting to kill Hans. This can relate to how the majority of the German population turned to the dark side when funny man with little mustache was coming into power. The people of Germany also started to hate the Jewish population because they were turned to the dark side, and were willing to get rid of them to help Germany out of bankruptcy. At the end of the scene in a wide shot, the people are charging at Hans, when suddenly the people freeze and put their hands up. On a close-up on Hans, we see a hand grab his shoulder, and the audience is shown that the police have arrived to end the kangaroo court in the hunt for Hans. This can indicate that the government still has hierarchy over the people, and they are still allowed to do what they need to do to get the job done, as well as showing how desperate society can be to get out of a small pinnacle situation that they're in. In the movie, kill the killer. I mean, that is one way to do it. And in the history involving Germany, getting rid of a specific religion that apparently is plaguing their country, and that they can finally be a regular society, which is really messed up. We have now come to the end of the video, and now we get to answer the 3 questions that I said at the beginning of the video. Starting off with question 1. Does this movie still hold up? Yes, it does. Watching this movie for this video actually made me realize it still holds up. It's a very good movie. Did it make an impact on Hollywood or society? Yes! It mostly impacted society than Hollywood. With Hollywood, it was mostly all the fancy stuff that the movie was showing, so the cinematography, sound, lighting, all that stuff was more at the Hollywood base. But the story, I would say, was more impacting on society to show the kind of how messed up people can get when something like this happens. Is it rewatchable? Yes and no. I personally think so every so often. But I can 100% see how people want to be like, oh, I will only watch this once and that's it. I totally understand that. If you don't really understand the contents of the film, I understand that. You'd be like, oh, yep, I watched it. That's it. I highly recommend watching this movie at least just once, though. It's a fun time overall and will actually shock you with what they were able to do in the 30s in Germany. And that's basically it. That's them. So thank you for watching. I hope you actually enjoyed this video. This video did take me a while. It's mostly trying to figure out the writing, and that's pretty much why it took so long. I was trying to figure out exactly what to write and what to put. So I'm glad that you all waited for this video to come out. I'm glad I covered this as my first official analysis video. This movie is, I mean, I had to cover it for a textual analysis in my film class, so I kind of already knew what I was doing with it. So I already had those steps to kind of do it. But the next video will be different. I'm not going to be doing any fancy movies or not. I'm going to kind of go back to kind of the first video. Instead of just talking about a specific movie, I'm going to be talking about a genre. That video will be out quicker than this one, mostly because the writing won't be as hard. I say that now. But I will get that done as soon as I can, so I can have a good upload schedule with that. So once again, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.